Welcome back to Unlocked, and I'm so excited today because I have Lindsay Ell on. Welcome.
Hey, girl.
I'm so excited to have you on. We've been trying to get this booked forever.
We have been messaging each other for a long time, and I'm sorry. Every time you ask, I'm like, I'm out of town, but like, when's your next opening? So we finally made it happen.
I know. So you've been busy, though. You've been on tour, and how's that been?
Amazing. I'm getting to tour with Shania Twain, like my childhood idol ever since I was a little girl.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, who else was it that we just had on that said they're going? Tennille. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Shania Twain, which is so awesome because Tennille came on and she's touring with her as well.
Yeah. Shania is just... she's obviously the GOAT, and she has like split up her tour all year this year.
Yeah.
And we got to kick off the Queen of Me tour like back in April, and then we have another run coming up at the end of the month. And so it's awesome.
That's
amazing. So excited.
And I love the fact that like she's having females on to tour with her.
Me too.
Because we were kind of talking before this just about how difficult it is in this industry, especially for women. It's just not something. Country music is like this drinking beer, just man's world.
And when you don't fit that mold, specifically the drinking beer, driving trucks mold, which I don't. It's just kind of difficult sometimes, to be like, well, wait, I was raised on this music. But people like Shania and artists like Shania are just so inspiring because she is just her.
Yeah.
And she always has been just her. And I remember like when Shania first came on the scene, there were so many like critics and blogs and everybody being like, Shania's gonna ruin country music. It has electric guitar in it. And like all these things, she's wearing a midriff on stage. And it's like, okay, not only did she like change the course of our format, but she like reinvented the definition of country music.
Yeah.
And to see a female artist who is not afraid to stand up about LGBTQ rights and just stand up for things that she believes in a world that is, and specifically in a genre that is not always accepting of some of those ideals. It's so beautiful. It's amazing just to be around her presence and her aura, and she's awesome.
That's amazing. I love it. And so music, like you said, it's been a journey. How long has it been? Let's give us like a breakdown of your starting point to now.
Gosh, I mean, I started playing guitar when I was 8, piano when I was 6. I started playing shows when I was 10. So I've been doing this ever since I was a little girl. I've been living in Nashville for the past 12 years. And ever since I moved down here, it just kind of felt like a whirlwind. I'm from Canada originally, and I went to LA for 6 months first to just sort of write. And somebody was like, I think you'd like Nashville. Like you should check Nashville out. And so I came here, and I remember just feeling like so welcomed by the music community here. And, the songwriters would be like, come on over to the house and we'll jam and we'll cook you dinner. And I'm like, who are these people? This is wild.
This is weird.
This is so weird. The Southern hospitality thing, like I'd never really felt it like that.
Yeah.
But I just gotten taken in by this town, and, I signed my record deal and a publishing deal like a year later.
Wow.
And then it just has felt like the past decade has been a whirlwind, truly. Like I've gotten to tour around the world and play venues that I've dreamed of playing. Yeah. And yet I think that, life is so magical, how it's cyclical. And I feel like I'm like still just beginning.
Well, I feel like what a lot of people don't realize in the music industry, and too a lot of other industries, is like there's a lot of start over. There's a lot of building you up just to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild.
Yeah. And I think like what I appreciated about my favorite artists is they constantly reinvent themselves, like constantly, like every few years or every album sometimes. Yeah. And so I'm definitely in that process. And sometimes, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was talking about like a caterpillar in a cocoon, like turning into a butterfly, as cheesy as that metaphor sounds. But like, it's the struggle of like getting out of their cocoon that like helps them be resilient to go through the next phase. And I feel like I'm just living that, I'm like getting out of my cocoon right now. And I'm like, goodness gracious, this is like a feat. Yeah. But I know it makes you stronger. And, God doesn't give you anything in your life that you can't handle. And so
I've always said that.
Yeah.
And that's where you find the most growth too, is
Totally.
in those really tough moments.
Totally.
And too, like, other than music, I feel like you're in a journey right now of just being 110% authentic and vulnerable, and especially through your social media, because you just posted recently just about your own personal struggles that you've endured. And how was that? How was coming out about that?
It was so terrifying. It was, I've always been pretty vulnerable on social media ever since I, really got on it. I came out as a survivor a couple years ago and talked about my story as a little girl with that. And most recently I got diagnosed with an eating disorder, and I'm like still in the process of recovery with it. And it was just something that I never really saw coming. And I think as like busy individuals, you sometimes just like go.
Well, you're high functioning.
Yeah. And you just never really think about it. And you're like, oh yeah. I'm fine. And meanwhile, I'm like bawling my eyes out on my kitchen floor some nights being like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And so it was just really coming to terms with, okay, maybe something's up here, and let's jump into that and explore and see what that could be. And so, I got diagnosed with a version of anorexia, and I never saw that coming at all.
Yeah.
And it's been like a very challenging recovery, and also so rewarding. And it's kind of weird that like I'm also in this part of my music and like my career where I'm also like digging into the depths of my soul and like really answering those tough questions of like, well, what is it? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What is this like new chapter going to be?
Yeah.
And it is a coincidence, and also probably not a coincidence at all that they're like happening at the same time.
So a few years back, you said you came out as a survivor. So what was that? Do you think that maybe led to the eating disorder? Like, what was that journey?
Yeah, I was raped as a little girl, and then again when I was 21. And I think that, any kind of trauma, whatever we go through in our life, when it is undealt with, it definitely can cause things like eating disorders or disease, or like the list goes on and on and on, depression. And although I've touched the corners of depression and anxiety, I just never really thought that an eating disorder would be something I would have to deal with. And I guess that's the first step of like complete denial in it. But yeah, I definitely think that, childhood trauma leads to a lot of things that we get to like unpack later on in our life.
Yeah, I've definitely discussed that a lot, on how you just, and when you experience trauma at such a young age, it's kind of just like, all right, that's my life. Yeah. So then it's like when anything else bad happens, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad because I already experienced this. So if I can get through that, I can get through anything.
Yeah. And I remember as a little girl, like feeling, because people would like make fun of me of being like the nerd. I was such a nerd, and I like never really like. I had a lot of acquaintances and friends in school, but I never like was the cool girl who like went out to parties and stuff. Like I just sat in my bedroom and played guitar, and that's it. And so I was not a cool kid at all. But it was like this, when that happened, it was like this skeleton I had in the closet. And I remember thinking as a little girl, I'm like, if people only knew, like there's more depth to me than they even know. And it's like a weird thing to carry around, because you carry it around as a kid as like a medal almost of
like if I can do this.
Yeah, if I can do this, then I've got life. Yeah. Like whatever life throws at me, I'm strong enough to get through it. And looking back on it now, like as my adult self is looking at my childhood self, it's like, man, you should never be like prideful of trauma. Because the minute you're doing that, it's almost like you need to keep it an arm length away from you, and you sort of see it as this thing or like armor that you wear, compared to like really diving into it and like holding hands with it and being like, okay, we're gonna address life together, because that is a part of me.
Yeah.
It's not something that I wear.
And too, when you look at it that way, you automatically have which I guess in a way, I'm talking about just like childhood trauma I experienced. You kind of hold it and you're like, okay, well, you don't know what this feels like.
No.
To everyone else externally, you hold them accountable for something they have no idea, because you're just like, oh my God, you're weak, you're this, you're that, because you don't know what it feels like to go through what I went through.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that it takes until you're an adult to realize, like, holy cow, I've been doing this wrong all along.
Yeah. And it's crazy. I mean, I had 2 of the most loving parents, and yet when that happened, I didn't tell my parents for like 7-8 years. Like, so even from the outside looking in, you can look at a situation and be like, oh, that looks like a great situation. And you just never know what's going on inside a kid's head.
No. And so as a kid, were there moments now that you're an adult that you look back and you're like, how did no one know? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Sometimes, but, you know, also growing up in an environment where you're just taught, like, everything's okay. Like, everything is okay. Yeah. And to always look like I remember I started playing in the church with my dad when I was a little girl. And that's kind of how I got started, like, being on stage and everything. And I just remember, like, the fact of, like, going to church feeling like everything is good, you know, like walking into that building being like, okay, like, we're just gonna smile and look like we're cool, like everything's cool, you know, like regardless of what's going on outside those doors, like we're just gonna walk in and be like this, like, put together unit. And I think, like, from that mentality, growing up with that mentality, it's just dangerous, because you tell yourself that your feelings don't matter, and you just get so used to putting on this front of everything's all right. Like that shirt that's like, everything's fine. I'm totally botching this shirt, but whatever. Like, I'm fine. Everything's whatever. I'm like, I hate that shirt, man, because I'm not fine. Actually, most days I'm really not fine, and it's okay. And if you keep telling yourself, like, things are fine, everything's gonna be cool, it's like, it's one thing to have a positive outlook, and then it's another thing to be, like, denying of your feelings.
Yes, because that's the thing. And to Christianity, I talk about this a lot on my podcast, because, like, my grandfather's a Southern Baptist minister. I grew up going to a private Christian school. There's this, and I'm, like, fully in my faith, and I believe what I believe, but there's also my former pastor came on my podcast last week, and it hasn't come out yet, but he spoke about how Christianity created cancel culture. Yeah. And if you're looking at it, there's this the biggest thing of Christianity. You will go into a church, it's like, not everyone, but there's a big misconception that's like, oh, because you believe in this, everything is perfect.
Yeah, I think that, like, I was raised Catholic, and I don't practice Catholicism anymore. I mean, when all that stuff happened when I was 13, it was from someone in my church. And so it just really turned me off of church, to be honest. And I was like, this is not a safe place anymore. But there's this thing about Catholicism, like, growing up, that it was very much so, like, as long as you say the prayers and as long as you are present, then you are a good person. And I'm like, I don't believe that. Yeah. I don't believe that. Like, if you get something from a building and from reading the Bible and from saying prayers, then great. Then also be a good person. But just because you do those things, it's not like you get a pass. And there was this thing in the Catholic Church that was like, if you show up, you get, like, that attendance check. You're like, you're good to go. And I'm like, I don't agree. Yeah. I don't agree.
Yeah. And too, when you experience, it has to be so difficult experiencing hurt and trauma and abuse in the same place you were taught is a safe place and a good place.
Yeah. And if anything, it just made me, I guess, internalize that, like, everything looks fine on the outside, but it's just chaos in the inside. And so it made me, like, not trust institutions and not really trust people from a really early age, because I just remember being so mortified and being like, I mean, just because they look like they're safe does not mean they are.
And so as an adult, has that been really difficult for you to try to kind of debunk that theory and trust, you know, because there has to be a point in time, because I'm going through this myself. It's like everyone, I'm like, you can't be trusted. You have an ulterior motive. I'm not going to trust you until you show me that you can be trusted. And, like, I put up traps for people.
It's weird because, therapy is like, God bless therapy. Yes. what would I be without it? I say I always have like a fleet of therapists. I have like 5 different ones depending on like what I'm going through, and an eating disorder one and this one. But when I started going to therapy was when I really started like sitting in forgiveness for like everything that happened when I was younger, and these things that like we can't change what's happened in our past. No.
But you don't have to become what happened to you.
So forgiveness has like, and gratitude have really, really helped me with the trust aspect. And almost now I so wear my heart on my sleeve, and I like will trust people to the core.
Yeah.
Like I've been very grateful to be surrounded by, a lot of amazing friends and a lot of amazing like past boyfriends, and like my current boyfriend is incredible. And so I'm so grateful for that. But there definitely, as we all meet people in life who just like take advantage of that. And I am the gullible, blonde, white Canadian, even though I just got my American citizenship. But
that
like,
is amazing too. I saw that photo and it was like, holy cow.
Dude, I mean, 12 years of work, like to finally get that. But I still feel that like gullible part of myself who's just wanting to trust and believe that people are like good. Like there's like goodness in all of us. And sometimes people take advantage of that,
Oh, they do. And it's so disheartening because it takes you, when you do trust someone and they violate that trust again, it takes you back to that place of like, see, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have.
Right.
And what is the biggest thing you've learned about that?
God bless. The biggest thing I've learned about that is you can't control what people are going to do. You can't control anybody else but yourself.
Yeah.
And so every morning, if you can wake up and be like, I'm going to make the best decisions that I can for me. And I'm going to like go out and spread like love to the people that I love in my life, and try to do a good job and try to show up fully.
Yeah.
Like that is literally the most that you can do. And there's a lot of, negative people sometimes around us, and negative things that happen to us. And if anything, if I've learned anything from it, it's like when you even catch a whim of like, something's a little fishy here. Yeah. It's just a sign to you that like maybe that person shouldn't be in your life. And the times when I've like let it go on a little bit too long, that's when like, the little spark turns into a wildfire, and you're like, okay, I should have seen this 6 months ago.
Yeah, listen to your gut.
Yeah,
anytime.
Your gut is like so smart. And sometimes we're like either way too busy or we're way too trusting to let things just go on too long.
And sometimes it's easier to let it go on than to stop it.
For sure. It's so hard. Like either breaking up a relationship or breaking up a friendship or like continuing not to work with somebody, whatever the reason may be. It is so hard to stop those relationships. But I just think, number one, you need to take care of yourself first and foremost. And number two, you're taking care of the other person. Because if it's like not working out for whatever reason, it's not going to work out for them for whatever reason.
Exactly.
And so really, you're looking out for each other.
That is so true. And so now, like you said, you were talking about relationships. So your boyfriend now, you're like, is amazing. How has the relationship journey gone? Because it is hard in what you do, being on the road. What would you say? Have you been like close to marriage? Have you been close?
Great question. I mean, I definitely want to get married. I want to get married so much. When that time feels right, but I've never been close to marriage. And I think it's like this independent part of myself that's always like, I know what I want to do. I have so many goals and I'm just going to go after them. Yeah. And I believe that like the universe will like eventually have the right person fall into my path, and then it will just feel right. And so I've never really worried about the marriage thing. Yeah. But I wrote a song last year called Right on Time. I have felt a lot of pressure about like kids.
Didn't you just release that? Or did you tease it on your social media?
Yeah.
That's where I heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember like shortly after I turned 30, like all my friends were getting married, having babies, doing all of the life box checks. Yeah. And I was like, I am not close to any of those things. Yeah. Like, did I just miss the memo on how you're supposed to do this? Or are these things just never going to happen for me? And I do think that we're all like writing our story in our own time, and it's unfolding how it all should. And, you know, my life isn't supposed to look like yours, or your life is not supposed to look like mine. And so our timelines are going to be different because of that.
And it's so hard because in the South too, you experience this like, all right, you should be married, you should have kids, you should. And I say, and I don't know if it's because, like I say, the thoughts of marriage scares me more than kids.
Why?
I don't know if it's maybe, and this is going to sound so bad, but I think maybe because kids, like, you're in control of, you know? So, like, if I were to have a kid, like, it's my responsibility, like, take care of them. And I make sure they get from point A to point B, all these things. But with marriage, it's kind of like you're giving over a part of yourself to someone so they have the ability to hurt you. I don't know if it's... Yeah, it's a weird thing I'm still trying to figure out in my mind.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, I mean, I just feel that if you choose the right person, it should never feel like that. Not saying that love isn't hard, and you know, I've never been married, and not saying that marriage isn't hard, but if you choose the right person, it's like a partnership,
and you have to choose someone that you can grow with. One of my best friends, Blaine, told me when I got engaged, and she was like, Savannah, you're going to be a completely different person at 25 than you are at 20, 25 and 30. Like, you have to make sure this person is someone that you can grow with and you're going to grow together. Yeah. And it always stuck with me because people think, like, I read a quote and it was like, you're going to be married to 1,000 different versions of that person. And you have to be okay with it.
You have to be okay with it. And you can never be with someone assuming that they're going to turn into this person. You have to be with somebody assuming that they will be exactly as they are today for the rest of your life. And are you okay with all of those things?
Yeah. Because I'm guilty. I'm so guilty of like getting into a relationship with someone. You're like, okay, well, it's going to get better. Yeah. They're going to get better.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they do not.
They do not in the way that you are expecting, because you are not in charge of their life. They are in charge of their life.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I still look at marriage as this beautiful thing. I mean, I'm such a hopeless romantic, despite all of like the weirdness that has happened in my life. I don't know how I'm still a hopeless romantic, but I love this idea of being able to like, truly have a partner and being that like couple that like still holds hands when they're like 70 years old and and stuff like that. So yeah, I fantasize about that stuff sometimes. And I also know that like my life has just taken on so many different courses than I thought it was going to. Like I don't like these things as a woman having a biological clock. I'm like, I don't know. I have so much I want to do before I even can talk about kids. Yeah. You know? And that's scary because it's like there's only a certain amount of time that I have before I need to make that decision.
100%.
And so it's just like this underlying pressure. And at the same point, it's just like you just take it one day at a time and you know, maybe I don't know what's best for me.
Oh, I love that. And that is so true. It's like, and I have friends who have gotten pregnant and they're like, we're not ready for it.
Totally.
But it's also, are you ever truly ready?
I don't think so.
You know, it's just like, it's one of those things like you do and you learn as you go and you're never truly ready.
Yeah. And then I have some friends who've decided to not have kids or have tried so long and have not been able to have kids. And I would adopt in a heartbeat. And so there are just like so many different ways you can skin this cat, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
well, and too, I have so much, because I have had friends who have said, you know, I don't want kids. And I remember at a younger age, I was like, oh my God, how could you not want kids? But as an adult, I'm like, okay, I have so much respect for people who can say, you know what? Love kids, but don't want them.
Right.
Because it takes a lot to raise a child. It takes a lot of love, a lot of different qualities. So for someone to say, you know what? They're cute, but not for me. I'm like, that takes courage. And there's so much respect for people like that.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. I'm such a like health nut and sometimes get like a little too woo woo for anybody. But like there's these things about like ancestral like wounds and patterns. And sometimes I get like so into my head that I'm like, maybe I'm just not supposed to have kids. Like, I don't know. Is that like a good thing to pass on or not? So I don't know. I'm just like, this isn't a decision that I can make today, and I'm good with that part of the decision.
But that's what I love also too about like the time that we're living in is it's becoming more normal.
Yeah.
To just be like, hey, do what works for you.
Right.
Like there's not this time clock. I don't have to do what everyone else is wanting me to do. I can step into a male dominated world. I can do all of these things and it's okay. It's okay that it's different from what you did. Yep. Like my grandmother, she's 70, almost, I think she's 78. Yeah, she's 78 years old. Amazing. But she's from the South. She's from South Carolina. She's like, okay, you need to be married. You need to have kids. You need to. And I'm like, I'm not from back in the day to where you already had 2-3 kids by the time you were my age.
Exactly.
Like, it's okay that I'm not doing it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. You get to write your own story.
Exactly. Today's episode of Unlocked is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to me talk, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you can be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $698 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June of 2021 and May of 2022. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Support for today's episode comes from Honeylove. The reviews are in. Honeylove came out on top for best wedding day shapewear. With wedding season upon us, this is the ad you've all been waiting for. Whether you're a bride or, let's face it, a guest always like me, or looking for an everyday fit, Honeylove is your go-to for all things shapewear. Honeylove has revolutionized compression technology, so you no longer have to feel like you're suffocating while wearing effective shapewear. You'll immediately feel and see the difference. Honeylove's best-selling Superpower Short is literally the go-to. It has targeted compression technology that distinguishes between areas where you want more support and areas that you just need less compression. Their Signature X targets and sculpts your midsection without squeezing your natural curves. It's designed to work with your body and not against it. But it doesn't stop there. Honeylove has more than just sculptwear. They have incredibly comfortable bras, tanks, and leggings for everyday support. Ladies, Honeylove is just as easy to put on as it is to take off. Shapewear shouldn't be hard. Their products make you look good and feel good. Whether it's for a wedding event or an everyday boost of confidence, Honeylove is the perfect +1. We have an exclusive offer just for my listeners. Treat yourself to the best shapewear on the market and save 20% off at honeylove.com. Use code UNLOCKED20 at honeylove.com.
I still don't know if I believe in like past lives, but I also am like, life and creation is just too incredible to think that just like this one lifespan is it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what else is it? I don't know. But I'm more like, when I think of past lives or whatever, or the emotional trauma that can be passed on within generations.
Yeah.
I do think that stuff is real. You know, when you see kids being born, even in like our generation now, with a lot of baggage and emotional trauma, and they're like tiny little kids, it's like, how can that stuff not be coming from other places, you know? Genetics are amazing, and science is so amazing. And I also think that, you know, our emotional wounds get passed on generation to generation to generation.
Yeah.
And when I see like, even, you know, my mom had depression, and when I see like the emotional states that I was born with as a child, I'm like, how can that stuff not be passed on? So what was I like in a past life? No idea. But I know that either like from a past life or from, you know, what my parents and what my grandparents and what my great grandparents and what that was like tossed down to you. I think that stuff is real.
I do too, because, and too, especially the older I get, or in the midst of really tough moments, I'll see things and I'm like, whoa. Like, or I'll meet, like, just recently, like, meeting people, and there's so much, I'm like, okay, whoa, this is a lot like my dad. Like, it's just weird, like, just qualities you find in people. And then it's like, I'll meet someone and I'm like, okay, are you a real person? Because this feels like an out-of-body experience.
Right. Like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. I think life is like constantly like you getting to know yourself deeper, and you getting to know yourself more. And you have these like deja vu moments sometimes where you're like, I know this, but I don't know this, but I know this somehow. And so I think that is the uncovering, and life is just this like constant like peeling of the onion to like deeper layers to deeper layers. And I think it stems from that, you know, like it's all in here and it's all in here. And we're slowly just going through the experience of life to uncover what like is inside of us, what we know.
Yes, because, and too, it's like I said, you live in a time to where it's not always okay to believe what you believe. And there has to become a point in time to where you shut everyone else out and you're just like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I believe. Doesn't mean everyone has to like it. I'm a firm believer, and like, I don't have to believe what you believe in.
Totally.
But I also have to respect you, and I have to love you despite not believing what you believe. And that's just, I believe humanity as a whole, I'm like, it's about loving each other no matter what. And that's the mark we're not quite getting right now in the world we live in.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I know. If only everyone could like stem it down to those like simple qualities and be like, it's not about our titles. It's not about our identifications. It's not about whatever. It's about loving each other as humans.
Yeah. And that's, I will say, I've realized throughout my whole journey of just even everything going on with my family, it's always, people love you for what you can do for them. They love you for just a different agenda. Not saying always, but unfortunately that's the world we live in. It's like, who can I associate with that's going to get me here or there? Or what can they do for me in the moment?
Yeah.
And then when they can't do what you thought they could do, all right, we're throwing them away.
Yes.
And it's such a disposable world that we live in, which is so sad. And it's like, even with Chloe and Grayson, my two siblings, I'm like, it's amazing how they view life, because it's so just like, they don't look at people like, okay, well, color of your skin or what. They don't look at any of that. They're just like, I love you, you know? And I'm like, that's what is so amazing about kids. It's just the innocence and it's amazing.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
If only we could remember those simple, like a way of living, you know?
But then it's also, then I take a step back and I'm like, okay, well, people believe in what they believe in for a reason, you know? So it's just like you were talking about the church and kind of how that definitely changed your viewpoint. We all don't, not saying none of us, but I feel like we live in a world where we don't take a second to step back and say, okay, even though I don't agree with what this person agrees with, what got them to this point?
Totally. Everybody has a story and a history. And if you can really understand why they are the way they are, I think it like brings us closer together. You know?
It does, because it's like, there are friends, like I've got friends, we believe completely different things.
Totally.
But you have so much love and respect because I understand why they believe what they believe in once you hear their life stories.
I know. And if anything, their different perspective lets me see another way of looking at it. And I get like so much insight, and I learn things from, you know, like you said, my friends who just have different beliefs and different ways of going about it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. And you can have these like beautiful conversations in a way of coming together and of like showing each other like the different sides.
Well, and that's what, like when I started this podcast, that's what I had stated was, and it's so hard because the culture we live in, it's like, I'm going to cancel you in a heartbeat. And I'm like, hey, and now I'm so far into it that I'm going to start kind of easing different people into it. But it's, okay, I have a Republican on my podcast. Okay, I have a Democrat on my podcast. Okay, like I have all these different people. Doesn't mean I agree with everything,
right. No.
but it gives you a different viewpoint. And we should live in a world where you could sit down and have a conversation to where you completely disagree with each other, but you do it respectfully and you have understanding as well. And I've been so afraid to get into that because it's like, okay, this is my livelihood. But at the same time, that's what we need. We need tough conversations that lead to growth, even if it's different viewpoints.
Absolutely. I think that is what makes us human.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 100%. So going back to your social media and how vulnerable you've been, how would you say that has helped you in your healing process? Or has it hurt you?
I think, social media is so beautiful in so many ways. I think that it lets us like speak to everybody on the planet if you want to and share your views and as a musician get music sent out there and you can write and record and release a song in like a day if you really wanted to. And so technology and social media is amazing. And even just the connections that I've had with fans, like when I came out with my story initially and the thousands of survivors that sent me DMs of like, thank you for sharing your story because you've inspired me to share my story or you've inspired me to go get help. And so that part of social media is like so incredible. It's amazing. And it's like life-giving to me and why I want to continue to be as vulnerable as I can on it. There are definitely challenging sides of social media that I think we all know about, specifically from an eating disorder standpoint, like my body image, my image around body image is still so messed up.
Yeah.
Like so messed up. And social media honestly is probably the worst thing for that. Cause you just, or I should talk just about myself, but like I compare myself to everybody and being a musician on stage and pictures get taken from like all different angles. And when I'm like playing a guitar solo and like bent over my guitar and like double chin and like laying on the stage or whatever, I like stand in the most unflattering angles and then people take pictures and like post them. And then I look at myself and hate my body. And so there are challenging aspects of social media. But I think the reason why I decided to share my story is one, I've always decided to just be as transparent as I can with my fans. And two, it keeps me accountable in this weird way.
That's what I was going to say is it holds you. I have said before, I will say things on social media or post things that I don't necessarily feel right now, but I hope to feel. So by me posting it is a way to like hold myself accountable of this is where you have to get to.
Yeah.
It's a weird mind game.
It is this weird mind game, but it's like this binding promise, at least that I've made to myself of like, this is where I'm at and this is where I'm going. And if I like take all of the armor off and people just see me as me, then all of a sudden there's like nothing to hide. And I can almost begin to trust the process of that, of like that vulnerability, and that vulnerability is okay. And it's scary because there are for sure people who are going to stomp on you, but again, that's part of life, and you can't get the love without the hate. Like they come at the same time. I've been reading this poet recently. Her name's Andrea Gibson, and she was saying like the lifeline of pain and of life and of love are like the same. Like you can't have one without the other. And so I've just been leaning in, and like trying to learn how to be myself, which is so hard. And
too, I think whenever you become truly authentic on social media, especially in the world, because I say as an influencer, as an artist, whatever it may be, when you have a large social media following, you make money off of it. There's all these different areas to social media. But when you start being yourself, it's insane how much more successful those sources of revenue are.
Yeah.
It's crazy to even, I even just realized, like, it's not all about posting the perfection. Mm-hmm. Sure, some people make a hell of a living off of it. Mm-hmm. But when you start posting the good, the bad, all of it, you become more human.
Yeah. And I think that there's an element of social media where you just get so tied to numbers and, will this post didn't do as well as this post, and then I need to do more posts like this because they're going to perform better. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and I have been so guilty of that. And even, you know, my career in the past few years, like, I've been so guilty of, well, is this song going to be better to get me on country radio? And what do I need to do to get a number one? And when you start having those kind of conversations, you take it away from like the authenticity of like who you are at. Mm-hmm. And so it's terrifying to, at least in my own place as a songwriter right now, make music from the point of just like, this is exactly what I'm feeling and this is a story I want to share with the world, compared to, this is a song that I think is going to go number one on country radio.
That's amazing. And too, I think for me, it's like I look at social media and I'll post stuff, and to see, like you said, the positive feedback from people and the messages that are just like, you changed my life, you did this, you did that. It's like, that makes every hateful comment that I've gotten worth it.
Totally.
Because I just went, I think it was Saturday night, I just went on Fox News and I did a segment on, you know, they were talking about just prison conditions and reform and things of that nature. And there were things they said that I outwardly said I agree with, and things that I outwardly said I did not agree with. Mm-hmm. And to hear, and I was so afraid of doing it because I was like, oh God, again, climate we live in, cancel. But I could no longer like hold myself down and my beliefs down that I knew would make a difference. And the amount of comments and messages I got after that was like, thank you so much for finally speaking out, like for all of us who can't, or for like our viewpoint that no one else has spoken about. It was like, I was like, okay, that's what makes it worth it.
Totally.
That's what makes it worth it. You guys have heard me talk about KiwiCo before, and let's just say our household is absolutely obsessed. I'm obsessed because it gets Chloe off of her iPad and into learning. And Chloe's obsessed because, well, let's face it, it makes learning fun. KiwiCo believes that every kid is naturally creative and curious, and that hands-on experiences build creative confidence and problem-solving skills that can absolutely change the world. KiwiCo delivers seriously fun learning for kids of all ages. So whether it's about science or sensory play, games or geography, every crate designed by their team of experts inspires excitement, curiosity, and moments of discovery. Chloe absolutely loved the bottle rocket crate. She is in a phase right now of being obsessed with science. So this crate is not only fun, but it helps her to learn, which we absolutely love. KiwiCo projects are designed by a team of educators, makers, engineers, and rocket scientists who brainstorm hundreds of ideas to create the most exciting, age-appropriate, and educational projects. The day that the KiwiCo box arrives will be your kid's favorite day of the month. There's something for kids of all ages, from infants and preschoolers to teens and beyond. There's also no commitment, so you can cancel or pause at any time. So if you want your kids to get off their iPads and become more engaged and learn, especially throughout the summer, KiwiCo is the way to go. Not only do you learn, but you also have fun doing it. So redefine learning with play. Explore hands-on projects that build creative confidence with KiwiCo. Get 50% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line at kiwico.com/unlocked. That's 50% off your first month at kiwico.com/unlocked. So throughout all the negative things there are positives that come from it.
For sure.
And it may not feel it in the moment, but it 110%, like you see it later on, which is funny.
Yeah, and those are like the parts of it that are real.
Yeah.
Like everything else is just trying to chase a number tree or a money tree or whatever. And I think like those reasons over here is the point of it all.
Yeah. And so what advice would you give to people who maybe were in your shoes a few months back, a few years back, that when you hadn't come out about all of the trauma that you had endured and the world, like you said, like in your industry too, it's like, all right, I can't talk about these things. It's not okay. It's not. How did you find the strength?
There's so much power in sharing your story. There's so much power in sharing your story. Again, like you'll know the right time to do that, but I think it is the one thing that connects us as human beings on this planet, when we can realize that we're all putting pants on one leg at a time and trying to figure out this thing called life and trying to deal with like the hard aspects of living. Like living's hard, man. And
it is.
We all have our different pressures of like, you know, hard and easy and pain and trauma and whatever, but like trauma to you is trauma to you, and that's valid. And when you can get to the place of, you know, courage and strength to voice that and share it, whether it's, you know, to one friend or to 2 million people or whatever, like it's so empowering.
It is.
And it's contagious.
And so how have you dealt with the shame aspect of it? Because I know there's a saying I go by, and it's like shame or jealousy or really any negative feeling is the thief of all joy. Yeah. And there's so much shame associated with trauma that really you shouldn't hold as the person who was done wrong, but for some reason we always do.
Yeah. If anything,
like, was that something you felt? Did you have that shame aspect with your trauma?
I think we all have shame. I think we all have shame every day of our life. It's a part of this process. You know, without shame, we don't have the same realizations. If anything, how I treat shame differently is instead of ignoring it and instead of running away from it, I like try to listen to it. And it's painful, man. Especially when I'm like not doing things like I previously have, like an eating disorder where I have these coping mechanisms of how to restrict, and whether, you know, your vice is drinking or drugs or eating or not eating or whatever, like we all have our vices. Like you can choose what is your vice. But when you start to realize those vices and don't lean into them in the same way and can't numb out from them in the same way, feelings get harder and pain hurts more and shame hurts more. But it also is like, it makes the light shine brighter. And if you can like really sit in that shame and listen to it, I think, I don't know, you get brought closer to the light.
That is amazing. I absolutely love. That's the thing. It's like there's so much goodness to come from hurt. Yeah. Which is hard to admit, and it takes a while, but there is so much goodness that comes from it, because now the voice that you can be to other people, it's just...
If we all lived monotone lives and everything just happened perfectly and we lived in Pleasantville or whatever that place is called, I don't even watch enough movies, but I think it was called Pleasantville. Life would be so boring and all of us would just do the same thing, and you know, there would be no character and there would be no love and there would be no I don't know, just I don't think life would have a point.
Yeah. And so what is next for you, I think, on this new journey of yourself? Because like I said, I feel like now you're transitioning into not a new you, but maybe like the you were always meant to be.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And it's so scary. I feel like I've taken a wrecking ball and like ruined all the structure in my life in the past year. Truly. And then I get to rebuild it the way I've always wanted to build it. And it's so terrifying and like stresses out my business managers more than I probably want to stress out. But like, there's this like fire inside of me that like wants to be heard and wants to like be seen in the way that I've never been seen before. And it just makes me emotional thinking about it. Like, I think that is the point, you know? And if you don't follow like those artistic like pulls wherever, you know, art wants to pull you in life, then I think you miss the brilliance of it.
That is amazing. And it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah, I think it does. But we all can find courage, you know, we all can find it. It's within us.
That's amazing, because I feel like I just know, listening to you, I'm thinking in my life and I'm like, okay, there are things that like maybe I haven't had enough courage to do yet. And to hear you say like, okay, it's difficult. Look at all these things I've overcome, but you can still do it. You can find it is a game changer.
And I'm just such a dreamer, and I like believe in these things. And if you constantly live within the confines of comfort zones and just the way you've always done things, or the easy normal that you know, you're never going to break out into bigger dreams and bigger things. And I like to dream big, you know.
Hey, I loved it. I love to have a dream that people look at and they're like, you know that's probably not going to happen, right?
I know.
You know, like that's the best feeling, honestly.
Yeah, I had a family member once when I was really, really little. Not my immediate family, but like extended family. Before I moved down to Nashville, and was like, we'll just wait till Lindsay gets it out of her system. You know, we'll let her go do this for a few years and let her get it out of the system. And I'm like, I'll show you what's getting it out of my system, man. Like, let me show you. I have a lot to do.
Okay, 12 years later, still, it's...
Yeah, just watch what I'll do in the next 10 years. I mean, you know, life is incredible when you really get to, like, mold the clay with your own hands.
That's amazing. So, new music you're working on.
I am. And I'm so excited and so terrified. I mean, I'm truly like stepping in new directions, and it's like so fulfilling. And also it's like a complete new plateau. So I'm like hoping my fans want to follow in the journey. And and yet I think that, you know, like we've been talking about, when you like really honor that voice inside of you, that's when things actually start to click into gear, because all of a sudden it doesn't feel like you're trying to be this facade, but you're really like speaking your heart.
So what would you say your new music represents?
I think it represents wanting to make the world a better place through art, and wanting to inspire people through art. Like I always have said, it's my favorite thing in the world to play live, because I can walk on stage and maybe make all the people in the venue leave a little bit happier than how they came. Or maybe like make them feel more connected to who they are as human beings. And if I've done that, then I know like I'm doing my job right. And it's been a good reflection these past few years, because I'm like, I need to be doing that in my own music for myself first.
Yes.
And then it starts to like emit out of it. And so, yeah, sonically, my music is feeling like the most me I ever have.
I love that.
It's like, it's like leaning in new directions, and I'm excited about it.
I love that. That makes me so excited for you. And like Thanks, even girl. The smile on your face, like the happiness that you show right now, like you can tell it's so authentic.
Yeah, I think that, you know, somebody always told me, when you're nervous about something, it means that it matters. And I'm so nervous and so excited at the same point. And so I just feel like that's when, you know you're in the right spot.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for just sharing your story. And
thanks, girl.
You've left, I can probably speak for everyone, you're leaving everyone feeling better than when they came today.
So sweet. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad we finally got to do this.
I know.
And I'm just so inspired watching you do what you do, and like having a platform and just spreading joy. And
thank you.
It's a good thing.
Thank you. You're the best.